Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music, and I want to look at stereo versus mono tracking today. Really, that's the introduction. That's it. We're going to look at it. I'm going to build a track. We're going to play around with it. I think you might be surprised. If we use synthesizers a lot and plugins, we're going to call up a patch and blast out a chord, and whoever designed that patch is going to be designing it for maximum impact. They probably will have included some effects in the patch. The sample set may well be already in stereo, but that might not be the best thing for our mix. Here's a loop. I'm using drum synth for my kick, snare, and hats, and sculpture for my 4 instrumental parts. And since drum synth is mono anyway, those tracks or channel strips show up down here as mono. I have inserted gain plugins in each of the sculpture tracks to collapse it into mono. Let's listen. Everything's panned dead center. Little EQ. Everything's living in its own space. I like that. I'm going to close this project because I did a completely separate mix. Okay, here's my mix, and this is after I went into each channel strip, set up 4 buses to give me a small reverb, a large reverb, and then a couple of echoes. Generally speaking, now I can take each individual track, pan it to the place I want it in the stereo field, pan the echoes to the place I want it in the stereo field. Reverbs too. In fact, we'll talk about the reverb space in a moment. Okay, so here's what we were just listening to, but stereophized. When you're setting up a stereo picture, you want to think left and right, top and bottom, if that's really a thing, and front and back. In the old days, and if we only have 2 speakers, this is the normal thing, depth was created by managing how much reverb was on the track. A dry lead vocal in the middle with maybe a little bit of echo on it. Hats panned left and right, echoes panned left and right, respectively. Let's take a look at each individual strip and talk about what's happening. We're going to begin with our kick drum. I've got a tiny bit of EQ, just cutting around 200 just to get out of the way of the bass and the low keys. And my channel strip has 4 buses on it, but I'm just sending a tiny bit of this kick to my small reverb, and you can see my small reverb over here. And I've used Space Designer, and I'm using a small drum plate. It's 0.7 seconds. Pretty good sounding plate, really. I'm going to mute that, and let's compare it to the snare. My snare also has EQ, of course. I want a little more meat, so I'm pushing it 100. But here I've got the small reverb, and I also have a larger reverb. I'm going to bring it up so you can really hear it. I don't want a lot of that, but some. And then you can certainly hear the echo. You can hear the echo is panned a little bit to the side. And I've sent the snare drum a little bit to the opposite side, just a little bit. Let's listen to the hats. And the hat is going way over to the side, and I'm using that same echo, but even more so, to create almost like a Haas effect, that is to say, a very quick delay that creates a stereoification of the channel altogether. Okay, so the bass is just going to get a little bit of room reverb. Kick and bass. All right, now let's get over to the instrument tracks because, you know, clavinets, Rhodes, electric guitar, all those instruments back in the day were mono. But if you call up an omnisphere patch and play a triad, it's going to go everywhere. Listen to this little piano sound. This is a really good example of the Haas effect. I'm sending a lot of it to that short echo. It's going to this echo over here, which is panned to the right and narrowed. It's panned to the left. So you get a stereo sound. It's going to leave a hole for your vocal. You'll probably notice some of these channels have most of them have post-fader sends. In a second, we'll get to a pre-fader send, and you'll see why. Here's my little sort of, I don't know, I imagine it's like if I was playing Stratocaster, probably. It's got both echoes and the large reverb. So it's kind of further back, isn't it? Listen to these two together. One's drier and then the front, the other one's further back. And finally, this curly whirly, which is a very reverbed sound. In fact, the actual keyboard sound itself is rather quiet, and mostly we're hearing up here the large room and a little bit of echo. We could probably even hear a little more echo. And I'm trying to push the sound back into the center. That's just the effects. Although it's going to be a little bit late, so I want a little more attack on it. There we go. Let's bring in the instrumental parts. It's a pretty wide stereo picture, not crazy wide, right? And then kick, snare, and hats. Well, listen, I hope this has been useful. I come from an old school, you know, I come from the style of tracking where we had, you know, 8 tracks on a reel-to-reel tape deck. And we made the most out of that by bouncing. We often have to commit to a stereo picture, and you don't want to go too far. Individual keyboard sounds right out of the box or out of your, say, workstation keyboard are really, most of the time, too big. Narrow them with EQ. Narrow them in terms of their stereo picture, and then place them carefully in the mix, considering every element. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, as we like to say here on YouTube, and ding the bell so you'll be notified when I do my next video. I want to know what's up with you. Do you have a question? Is there something that's really burning with you? I usually make these videos based on things that come up, questions from my own students. So let me know. I try to be on top of everything. I almost always answer comments, and it's great to talk with you. So I'll see you next time.